Lynette's face went white as a sheet. Gerald's frantic hands stuffed papers into his briefcase, voice high and panicky. "This meeting is over," he snapped, stumbling to gather his things. "Any further communication will go through legal channels." But I was already walking toward the door, feeling the weight of everything I'd uncovered. I didn't need their permission anymore. I knew I had what I needed. My next step was clear. I was going straight to the county prosecutor's office. As I pushed open the door, I heard Lynette shouting behind me, her voice cracking. "You can't do this! You have no proof!" But I didn't look back. I had everything on tape. Her own words, her lies, the entire scheme. The recording was crystal clear, and I could feel the momentum shifting in my favor. Justice was finally within reach. I had exposed her. Now she was the one cornered. The courthouse was packed the next morning. Rumors had spread fast. Everyone in Millbrook County seemed to be watching. I sat at the plaintiff's table with my lawyer, Sarah Chen, while Lynette and Gerald sat opposite, their faces pale and tense. The room was thick with anticipation. Everyone knew this wasn't just about a land dispute anymore. It was about the truth finally coming out. Judge Hoffman called the court to order, and the proceedings began. Sarah presented the mountain of evidence: Frank Miller's survey, the original deed, the forged development application, and the recording of Lynette admitting she could manipulate official records. Each piece of evidence was like another blow to their house of lies. Frank Miller took the stand first. His weathered voice, steady and firm, explained how he'd surveyed Grandpa's land in 1998 and how Lynette had tried to bribe him to change the records. "I've never had anyone ask me to alter legal documents before," he said, eyes sharp with anger. "When she suggested I do it, I knew something was wrong. I refused, and that was the last I heard from her." The courtroom listened intently, some witnesses wiping tears, others exchanging nervous glances. Nancy Doyle followed. Her voice trembling, she recounted the blackmail, the threats, and her fears of losing her family. "Lynette has dirt on almost everyone," she said, voice breaking. "If you crossed her, she'd destroy you. I was so scared, I went along with things I knew weren't right just to keep my family safe. But I regret it now." Her words tore through the crowd, her bravery shining through her fear. Then it was my turn. I took a deep breath and told the story of how I inherited the ranch, the mysterious fine, and the shocking discovery of the real boundaries. I played the recording, Lynette's own voice admitting that records could be manipulated, and the courtroom erupted in whispers. "She didn't just steal from me," I declared. "She destroyed Tommy Yates's farm, blackmailed neighbors, and manipulated this entire community for her own greed." Tommy, who had driven in from North Carolina, stepped forward and confirmed my account. "I lost everything," he said, voice thick with emotion. 3 years of building my farm, investing my money, and then losing it all in one day because of her lies." Judge Hoffman's eyes narrowed as she listened. After a tense silence, she delivered her verdict. "Miss Godfrey, Mr. Denton, your actions have betrayed this community and broken the law. You've committed fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering." She ordered Lynette to pay restitution totaling over $347,000, split among the victims, and banned her from serving on any HOA board again. Gerald Denton was stripped of his law license and fined heavily. Both were led away in handcuffs, their faces a mixture of shock and rage. Outside, the crowd was stunned, but relieved. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman from the neighborhood, grabbed my hand, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "We were all too scared to fight back, but you did it for us." Tommy shook my hand, voice thick with gratitude. "You gave me my life back," he said. "I'll never forget that." Even Deputy Martinez, who'd investigated the break-in at my house, nodded approvingly. "That woman was dangerous," he said quietly. "You did the right thing." Months passed and the community slowly healed. Tommy moved back onto the land, rebuilding his farm on the rightful property. Nancy Doyle was elected as HOA president, and under her leadership, the organization started to change, becoming what it was always meant to be. The residents finally understood. They'd been living on land that belonged to the Morrison family for decades, and now they had legal protection. As I stood on the edge of my property, watching Tommy tending his vegetables and Nancy working, In her flower beds, I thought about Grandpa's words. The truth has a way of coming out eventually. He was right. Every lie, every scheme, every act of greed had been exposed. Lynette's reign of terror had ended, and the land, my land, was finally safe. But I knew this victory was just the beginning. There were still questions to answer. Who had forged those documents? Who had manipulated the survey records? I had already uncovered a trail, clues pointing toward a deeper conspiracy, one that reached far beyond the HOA. I wasn't done yet. The real battle was about to begin, and I was ready to face whatever was coming next. Because in this fight, for truth and justice, the biggest twists were still hidden in the shadows, waiting to be revealed. My heart pounded as I stared at the recording, Lynette's own voice admitting she could manipulate official records. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on me, on the evidence I had just laid bare. The truth was out, and I knew this was the moment everything would change. Lynette's face twisted with panic, her hands trembled as she tried to deny it, but her words had already sealed her fate. Gerald Denton looked like he'd seen a ghost, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Judge Hoffman's voice broke the tense silence. "Miss Lynette Godfrey, Mr. Gerald Denton, your actions have betrayed this community and broken the law. This scheme, fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, will not stand. You are ordered to pay restitution of over $347,000 to the victims. You are banned from serving on any HOA board for life." And she paused. "You will face criminal charges. This court is adjourned." The gavel struck, and the courtroom erupted into whispers, some in shock, others with silent relief. Lynette's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks as she was led away. Gerald, defeated, was cuffed and taken out, his eyes flickering with regret and anger. I stood there, breathless, knowing I'd done what no one else dared. I had taken down the monster hiding behind a mask of civility. Outside, the crowd was already gathering, murmuring and pointing, some shaking my hand, others just watching in silence. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman from the neighborhood, approached, clutching my arm with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she whispered hoarsely, eyes shining with tears. "You freed us from her grip." Tommy Yates, who had driven back from North Carolina, pushed through the crowd to shake my hand with a firm grip. "You didn't just save my farm," he said. "You saved us all." As the dust settled, I looked over the land I'd fought so hard for, the land I'd thought belonged to me all along. The real boundaries, the original deeds, they had been buried under lies, forged, documents and greed. Now, with everything exposed, it was finally clear. I owned this land, every inch of it. The truth had come to light, and nothing could take it away from me now. But beneath that victory, a whisper of doubt lingered. I remembered the strange glare Nancy Doyle had given that night at the gas station, her trembling voice warning me to stop digging. I recalled her words, "Some things are better left alone." It wasn't just fear, it was something darker. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide the truth, to silence anyone who knew. The fight wasn't over. Far from it. Someone was still out there watching, waiting. I had the evidence, yes, I had the legal proof that Lynette and Gerald had forged documents, manipulated records, and stolen from us all. But I also sensed a deeper conspiracy, one that stretched beyond what I'd uncovered. I needed to find the bigger picture, the original source, the real mastermind behind this scheme. Whoever it was, they'd tried to keep me from finding the truth, and now I knew I had to dig even deeper. That night, I sat in my dimly lit house, staring at the piles of papers, deeds, and maps. I pulled out the original survey Frank Miller had given me, comparing it to the new records the HOA had presented, and everything aligned perfectly, except for one glaring detail. The boundaries that truly belonged to me stretched far beyond what anyone claimed. I traced the lines on Grandpa's old map, feeling the weight of history and justice in my hands. Someone had deliberately erased decades of rightful ownership, replacing it with lies and fake documents. I knew I had to act fast. The more I uncovered, the more dangerous this became. Whoever was behind this wouldn't give up easily. I had to be ready for the next move. I reached for my phone and dialed the only person I trusted to help me now, Frank Miller. His voice was gruff but steady as I explained everything. When I told him about the forged development application and the suspicious fires that had destroyed other surveyors' records, his tone grew serious. Son, this isn't just about land. Someone's been playing dirty for a long time. I've got copies of all my reports and I'll send them to you. But be careful. These people don't mess around. If they're willing to burn surveyors' records, they'll do anything to keep their secrets hidden. I felt a chill run down my spine. The game had changed. This wasn't just a land dispute anymore. It was a fight against a powerful, corrupt force that would stop at nothing to protect their lies. I had the proof now, but I also knew I needed more. I had to find the root, the original deed, the true boundary lines, and expose whoever had been manipulating everything from the shadows. The next morning, I headed straight to the courthouse. I pulled the files on the Willowbrook development, my heart pounding. What I found made my blood boil. The entire development was based on forged documents, papers that claimed the land had been donated by a non-existent trust. Someone had forged deeds, created fake applications, and used intimidation and lies to steal what was rightfully ours. I had the evidence, but I also had a dangerous enemy who would do anything to cover their tracks. As I left the courthouse, I felt a surge of determination. I was not going to let them get away with this. I still had the original survey maps, the deeds, the testimony of Frank Miller, proof that could bring the whole conspiracy crashing down. But I also knew I had to move carefully. These people were dangerous. They would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. That evening I set up a recording device in my house, ready to catch Lynette or her cohort slipping up again. I had to prove she was lying, and I had to catch her in the act. I arranged a meeting with her, pretending I was willing to settle. As she walked through her polished words and fake smiles, I kept my recorder running. I played the part of the desperate man, but inside I was calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then she slipped. Her voice trembled just enough to be caught on tape. She admitted to her own schemes, to forging documents and manipulating records. The proof was in her own words. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. I had everything I needed. The evidence was overwhelming, and I was ready to take her down once and for all. As I turned off the recorder and left her house that night, I knew this was only the beginning. I had exposed her lies, but the real fight was still ahead. The fight to reclaim my land, my justice, and the truth buried beneath layers of deception. Whatever was coming, I was ready, because I knew the worst was yet to come, and I wouldn't back down. I stared at the recording, Lynette's own voice admitting she could manipulate official records, and my blood ran cold. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on me, on the proof I'd just laid bare. Lynette's face twisted with panic, her trembling hands clutched at her hair as she desperately denied everything, but her words had already sealed her fate. Gerald Denton's face was pale. His jaw clenched as he realized the trap was closing in on him. Judge Hoffman's voice cut through the tense silence. Miss Lynette Godfrey, Mr. Gerald Denton, your actions have betrayed this community and broken the law. This scheme, fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, will not be tolerated. You are ordered to pay restitution of over $347,000 to the victims. You are permanently banned from serving on any HOA board, and, she paused, eyes narrowing, you will face criminal charges. The gavel slammed down, and chaos erupted in whispers. Lynette's face crumpled as tears streamed down her cheeks. She was being led away, her carefully constructed mask shattered. Gerald, defeated, was cuffed and hauled out, his eyes flickering with rage and regret. I stood there breathless, knowing I'd done what no one else dared. I had taken down the monster hiding behind a mask of civility. Outside, the crowd was already murmuring, some clapping, some just staring in stunned silence. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman from the neighborhood, came forward, clutching my arm tightly. "Thank you," she whispered hoarsely, eyes shining with tears. "You've freed us from her grip." Tommy Yates, who had driven back from North Carolina, pushed through to shake my hand with a firm grip. "You didn't just save my farm," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You saved us all." I looked over the land I'd fought so hard for, the land I'd believed was mine. But the truth was far darker. Every boundary I'd inherited, every deed I'd trusted, None of it was real. Someone had forged documents, manipulated records, and stolen what belonged to me. The original deeds, the ancient maps, those were the only truths. And I knew the fight wasn't over yet. The real enemy was still out there, lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting to strike again. That night, I sat in my dimly lit house, staring at the mountains of papers and maps spread across the table. I pulled out the original survey Frank Miller had given me, comparing it meticulously to the fake records the HOA had presented. All of it matched, except for one glaring detail. The true boundary lines, marked clearly on Grandpa's old map, stretched far beyond what the HOA claimed. Someone had deliberately erased those lines, replaced them with fake boundaries, and stolen my land piece by piece. I felt a cold dread settle over me. Whoever was behind this had gone to extreme lengths, burnt survey records, forged deeds, and even tried to intimidate witnesses. I knew I had to move fast. I reached for my phone and dialed Frank Miller. His voice was rough but steady as I explained everything. When I told him about the forged development application and the suspicious fires that had destroyed other surveyors' records, he cursed softly. "Son, this isn't just about land anymore. Someone's been playing dirty for a long time. I've got copies of all my reports and I'll send them to you. But you've got to be careful, they don't mess around." The pieces clicked into place. The conspiracy ran deeper, bigger than I'd ever imagined. Someone had been manipulating the entire system, selling, forging, lying, covering their tracks with fire and fear. I had the proof now, but I knew I needed more. The original deed, the true boundary, the real history of this land, had to be uncovered before they destroyed it all again. The next morning I stormed into the courthouse, heart pounding. I pulled the files on the Willowbrook development, and what I found made my stomach turn. The entire project was built on forged documents, papers claiming the land had been donated by a non-existent trust. Someone had forged deeds, created fake applications, and used intimidation and lies to steal what was rightfully mine. I had the evidence, proof that could topple their entire scheme. But I also knew they had people everywhere, watching, waiting. As I left the courthouse, I felt a renewed surge of determination. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I had the original deeds, the map, the testimony of Frank Miller, every piece of proof I needed. But I also understood this was just the beginning. Whoever was behind this was dangerous, and they wouldn't stop until I was silenced. That night, I set up a tiny recorder and waited for her. I arranged a meeting with Lynette, pretending I was willing to settle, willing to accept her terms just to catch her off guard. She arrived with her usual polished smile, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. I played the part of the desperate man, but inside I was calculating. She slipped. Her words trembled just enough to be caught on tape. "I manipulated the records," she admitted. "I forged the documents. I did everything to keep you from claiming what's yours." I felt a jolt. This was the final piece. Everything she'd ever done, her lies, her deception, all laid bare. That moment I knew I had her. The evidence was overwhelming. I had her own voice, her own words. The truth was in her own confession. I pressed record, watching her face drain of color. She tried to deny it, but her trembling hands betrayed her. I knew then, this was the end. As I left her house that night, I didn't just walk away with proof. I walked away with a storm inside me. I had dismantled her lies, exposed her greed, and brought her empire crashing down. But more importantly, I had uncovered something even darker, an entire network of corruption, manipulation, and greed that stretched beyond just my land. The final twist hit me as I looked out over the land I fought for. The land I thought was mine all along was never truly theirs to take. It was my inheritance, my birthright. And now I realized that the real victory wasn't just reclaiming the land. It was ending the cycle of greed and deception that had poisoned this community for decades. As dawn broke, I knew this wasn't just a story about land. It was about justice, about standing up against monsters hiding behind masks of civility, and about the truth finally coming out, no matter how dark or twisted it might be. And in that moment I understood. This land, my land, had become something more than just dirt and trees. It was a symbol, a testament that sometimes the fight for truth is the hardest battle, but it's always worth it. Because in the end, justice isn't just about winning. It's about making sure the liars and thieves can never hide behind their masks again.